Well, thank you. Sacred natural sites are those places in nature, areas that are of particular spiritual value to people or communities. They're usually governed by specially appointed people within the community, village committees, religious leaders, or otherwise recognized people with specific responsibilities to these places. Um, this brings us to the point why their governance systems are so extremely vulnerable, because they're often decentralized. In relation to biodiversity conservation, once we take a rights-based approach, for example, we would like to support all these different governance systems in order to keep maintaining these sacred natural sites. They contribute to biodiversity conservation worldwide. We don't know how many sacred natural sites exist, and neither do we know where they are located exactly. But there certainly, in a small country like Estonia, for example, already 7,000 of these places exist, and they've been mapped, and there's a registry of those places. The local ministries are informed of where they are, and development actions do not harm these places.
And what are we talking about? Are we talking about areas like Stonehenge, like Machu Picchu? You mentioned earlier on Ayers Rock in Australia. Are those the kinds of areas we're talking about?
Potentially, yes. We do have to recognize that many sacred sites are either man-made sites, constructed sacred sites like temples or sacred cities with observatories for planetary systems, such as in Machu Picchu, for example. But the ones we focus on in relation to biodiversity are natural sites, which may have some of these constructed elements in it, but are usually recognized as sacred because of their outstanding features, for example, like Ayers Rock. The deeper meaning of this place is really entwined with the culture, and therefore this place is also no longer called Ayers Rock. It's called Uluru. It probably has various names depending on the tribes who recognize the sacredness of this place. So these natural places exist all around the world. I'm from the Netherlands myself, and in the south of the Netherlands we recognize sacred trees and sacred wells and waterways. And they have, in some cases, been opposed, have had superimposed colonial regimes which didn't recognize these places, or religious regimes which didn't recognize these places, causing, in case of the southern Netherlands, many of the sacred natural sites to be destroyed or replaced by chapels constructed by the Roman Catholic Church, for example.
I think it doesn't always stop governments from developing. I was reading in the I think it was the Times of India recently, a huge dam is being built in the north of the country, submerging five or six temples, and they'll be gone forever. So, what kind of impact does it have ensuring that these places remain sacred? It's not good enough, is it, just to say this is sacred? There needs to be continual work and continual pressure.
Well, I think for many generations it has been good enough to say that these places are sacred, because for many generations these places have been safeguarded and maintained, and the biological diversity contained in them along with it. What we need at the moment is the means to curb the development pressures that threaten these places. And the CBD has very effectively developed the AquaCon guidelines, which advocate environmental and social impact assessment on development projects that are imposed on sacred natural sites, sacred sites per se.